You can buy Florida waterfront for under 15 grand right now. Not landlocked swamp, not a timeshare scam. Actual deeded parcels, river lots, canal frontage, Gulf front dirt, listed at prices that sound like typos. Here's what nobody's saying. The price isn't a deal, it's a diagnostic code. Every one of these lots is cheap because of something specific. A FEMA flood zone that requires 14 feet of elevation on pilings. A federal law that blocks you from ever getting flood insurance. A septic setback rule that makes the lot physically unbuildable. A hurricane that rewrote the entire cost structure 3 years ago. The lot's $8,000. The foundation to meet code is 70 grand. The mound septic system because you're in a high water table is 15. The flood insurance once you're built is 6,000 a year. You're not buying waterfront, you're buying a regulatory puzzle that costs $250,000 to solve. This video walks through 10 real locations. If you're shopping cheap Florida waterfront on a fixed retirement income, the next 20 minutes will save you from the most expensive mistake you can make. Satsuma sits on the St. Johns River, 40 miles south of Jacksonville in Putnam County. River lots here run $8,000 to $14,000. The water's wide, slow moving, brackish, a few fish camps, boat launches, no real town infrastructure. The price reflects 3 things: flood zone, septic requirements, and road access that doesn't actually exist. Most waterfront parcels fall into FEMA Zone AE, Special Flood Hazard Area, with established base flood elevations between 8 and 12 feet, NAVD 88. This isn't hurricane surge, it's riverine flooding that rises slowly and stays for weeks. Hurricane Irma in 2017 kept the St. Johns above flood stage here for over a month. Your house sits in standing water for 30 days straight. Roads are impassable. You're cut off from medical appointments, groceries, emergency services. Base flood elevation of 10 feet means your finished floor must sit at 11 feet minimum. That's either deep pilings or massive amounts of engineered fill. Either way, you're looking at $40,000 to $60,000 in foundation work before the structure starts. The septic surprise. Putnam County requires mound systems in high water table flood-prone soils along the river. Standard drain fields won't percolate in saturated ground. A mound system means importing fill, engineered sand layers, above grade distribution. Cost runs $12,000 to $18,000 versus $4,000 to $6,000 for conventional septic. Then there's the paper road problem. Many Satsuma waterfront lots trace back to 1950s subdivisions platted with 50-foot wide lots and roads that were never paved or maintained. Putnam County doesn't maintain private subdivision roads. Your $10,000 lot may have legal access via easement only, requiring negotiation with neighbors, or $30,000 in private road improvements before the county issues a building permit. And the myth that kills deals: buyers assume old platted lots are automatically buildable under grandfather clauses. Putnam County requires all new construction to meet current flood elevation and setback requirements regardless of when the lot was platted. That 1955 plat doesn't exempt you from 2024 building codes. Add it up: $8,000 lot, $50,000 in fill or pilings for elevation, $15,000 for mound septic, $20,000 for road access, another $10,000 for a well since there's no municipal water. You're at $100,000 before walls and roof. Annual flood insurance on the finished structure runs $3,000 to $6,000 under risk rating 2.0 because of your distance to water. The lots are cheap because the St. Johns floods predictably, the soil won't drain, and the roads were drawn on paper but never built. Suwannee sits where the Suwannee River empties into the Gulf in Dixie County. This is Big Bend coastline. No barrier islands, minimal development, an economy built on fishing and crabbing. Lots here go for $5,000 to $12,000. The price reflects federal exclusion, recent hurricane damage, and the highest cost flood zone designation FEMA assigns. Significant waterfront near Suwannee falls into Coastal Barrier Resources Act zones, specifically units P18 and P19. CBRA designation means no federal flood insurance exists for your property. The National Flood Insurance Program won't write a policy. No federally backed mortgages, FHA, VA, USDA loans are prohibited. No federal disaster assistance after hurricanes. You're cash only and you're self-insuring against total loss. Private surplus lines flood insurance, if you can find a carrier willing to write in a CBRA zone, runs $8,000 to $15,000 annually for a modest home. Hurricane Idalia made landfall just south of here here in August 2023 as a Category 3. Storm surge pushed 8 to 12 feet through these waterfront areas. Older structures were destroyed. Recent damage makes the risk concrete, not theoretical. Lots with direct Gulf exposure fall into Zone FEZE, a velocity wave zone. FEMA's highest risk designation. VE requires elevated pile foundations only. No slab on grade, no fill platforms, no block walls below base flood elevation. Pilings must be embedded 15 to 20 feet below grade and engineered to resist wave loads. Breakaway walls required for any enclosed area below the structure. Foundation work in Zone VE adds 40 to 60% over standard elevated construction. For a modest home, you're looking at $60,000 to $90,000 in foundation and site work alone. Dixie County has no municipal water or sewer. Private well and septic required. The nearest hospital is over 40 miles. Grocery and medical services require significant drives. $7,000 lot, $70,000 in VE compliant pile foundation, $15,000 for septic and well, $10,000 annually for private flood insurance if available. After Idalia, you know exactly what happens when the forecast turns bad. Storm surge obliterates the structure. No insurance payout, no FEMA assistance, total loss. The lots are cheap because the federal government decided in 1982 that taxpayers shouldn't subsidize development here, and Hurricane Idalia proved why. Steinhatchee is a fishing village on the Big Bend coast in Taylor County, where the Steinhatchee River meets the Gulf. More infrastructure than Suwannee, fish camps, restaurants, a small marina, but still rural. Lots run $7,000 to $14,000. The price reflects flood zone uncertainty, recent hurricane damage, and lot geometry that makes building physically difficult. Many Steinhatchee waterfront lots sit in FEMA Zone A, special flood hazard area, where base flood elevation hasn't been precisely calculated and mapped. Zone A is different from AE. There's no established BFE on FEMA maps. The local building official determines required elevation by site survey and interpolation from nearby AE zones. You don't know your build costs until you pay for an elevation certificate and get a determination from the county. That uncertainty makes lending difficult. Banks treat Zone A conservatively. Flood insurance is required, but premiums vary wildly because there's no fixed elevation standard yet. Hurricane Idalia hit Steinhatchee directly in August 2023. 6 to 8 feet of storm surge pushed through downtown and residential areas. Older homes built to 1980s and 1990s elevation standards went underwater. The homes that survived were built well above minimum code, not to code, above it. Post-Idalia, Taylor County enforces current elevation requirements strictly. Typical determinations for Zone A here run 8 to 11 feet, NAVD 88. Your finished floor sits at 9 to 12 feet above existing grade. Then the geometry problem. Many older subdivisions were platted in the 1960s with 50 by 100 or 60 by 120 foot lots. Taylor County setbacks, 25 feet front, 10 feet sides, 25 feet rear, plus 25 feet riparian setback from the river or Gulf's ordinary high water mark. On a 50 by 100 lot, subtract setbacks. 50 foot width minus 20 feet in side setbacks leaves 30 feet. 100 foot depth minus 25 front, 25 rear, 25 riparian leaves 25 feet. Your buildable envelope is 30 by 25, 1,250 square feet maximum footprint. Now fit an elevated home on pilings with parking underneath. The septic geometry compounds it. Taylor County requires 75 foot setback from surface waters for drain field. On a narrow waterfront lot, that setback can consume the entire buildable area. Some lots physically cannot accommodate a code-compliant septic system without a variance or alternative system. Mound or aerobic treatment systems run $15,000 to $25,000. $9,000 lot, $400 for elevation certificate, $500 for septic feasibility evaluation, $50,000 for foundation to meet the Zone A determination, $20,000 for alternative septic. You're at $80,000 before structure, and you still don't know if the lot works until you pay for the surveys. The lots are cheap because Zone A means buying before knowing the rules, and Idalia taught everyone that meeting minimum code isn't the same as surviving the next storm. Yankeetown is a village of under 500 people in Levy County where the Withlacoochee River meets the Gulf. Jumping off point for Nature Coast kayaking and fishing. One small grocery, no major medical facilities. Lots go for $6,000 to $13,000. The price reflects state coastal designation, shallow water that isn't what buyer's picture, and flood insurance costs that don't stop after you build. Much of Yankeetown's waterfront falls within Florida's coastal high hazard area under state statute. CHHA designation triggers additional scrutiny. Coastal construction control lines may apply. Wind load requirements jump to 150 miles per hour or higher. Vegetation preservation rules tighten. Density gets limited. Levy County's comprehensive plan includes CHHA policies that can restrict redevelopment of older subdivisions. That regulatory overlay creates uncertainty and depresses values. The shallow water problem. Much of Yankeetown's waterfront is tidal marsh with creeks and channels that run 1 to 3 feet deep at low tide, unusable for most boats. Waterfront here means marsh view, not boating access. Listings don't clarify the distinction. True deepwater access, a canal lot connected to the main channel or river, commands higher prices. The cheap lots are the ones with 18 inches of water at low tide. Yankeetown waterfront sits predominantly in Zone AE, with base flood elevations from 7 to 11 feet, NAVD 88. Elevation adds cost, but the bigger hit is annual flood insurance. Under risk rating 2.0, premiums now reflect distance to water and replacement costs, not just elevation and zone. A properly elevated home on a waterfront lot will carry significantly higher premiums than an identical home a few blocks inland. Run the numbers. $150,000 replacement cost home, elevated properly, on a waterfront lot equals $3,500 to $5,000 annual flood insurance. Over 20 years of retirement, that's $70,000 to $100,000 in flood insurance alone. Water quality adds cost. Yankeetown sits in a coastal area with brackish water intrusion into shallow aquifers. Wells must be drilled deeper, 120 to 180 feet versus the typical 80 to 100 to reach potable water below the saltwater interface. Deeper wells cost $4,000 to $7,000 versus $2,500 to $3,500. Water softening systems are almost always necessary. $9,000 lot, $55,000 for pilings and elevated foundation, $6,000 for deep well and softener, $12,000 for septic, $4,000 annually for flood insurance. That's $400 monthly in flood insurance before homeowners coverage, property tax, or utilities. The lots are cheap because waterfront here can mean a drainage ditch. The state designated this a high hazard area after past hurricanes, and your proximity to water drives carrying costs that never end. Panacea is an unincorporated community in Wakulla County on the Gulf of Mexico, 20 miles south of Tallahassee, known for oysters and Chokoloskee Bay fishing. Minimal commercial development, but better service access than most Gulf communities due to Tallahassee proximity. Lots run $8,000 to $15,000. The price reflects velocity wave zone requirements, state permitting layers, insurance costs that dwarf mortgage payments, and private roads that trap entire subdivisions. Gulf-facing Panacea lots sit predominantly in Zone VE due to hurricane surge exposure. Historical storms have brought 6 to 10 feet of surge here. Zone VE requirements are the strictest FEMA assigns. Piling foundations only. No slabs, no fill platforms, no continuous foundation walls below base flood elevation. Pilings engineered for wave impact and erosion scour. Breakaway walls required below the elevated structure. All utilities and HVAC elevated or flood resistant. Building in Zone VE costs 50 to 70% more for foundation and site work than Zone AE construction inland. Modest 1,200 square foot home, $60,000 to $90,000 just for foundation before framing starts. Some Panacea lots fall seaward of Florida's Coastal Construction Control Line, managed by DEP. Construction seaward of the CCCL requires state permit plus local permits. The CCCL process involves environmental impact assessment, engineering analysis of erosion and storm impact, proof your construction won't destabilize adjacent properties. Approval timelines stretch 6 to 12 months. Potential denial or costly erosion control requirements. That's the hidden timeline killer. Buyers see cheap lot. Imagine starting construction in months. Seaward of the CCCL, you're looking at 6 to 12 months of state review before you apply for local building permits. Even building to code, flood insurance is brutal. Risk rating 2.0 prices Zone VE hard. Properly elevated home, $200,000 replacement cost, $6,000 to $10,000 annual flood insurance. That's $500 to $833 monthly for flood coverage alone. Before homeowners insurance, property tax, utilities. On a fixed retirement income income of $3,000 to $4,000 monthly, flood insurance becomes 20% of the budget. Private road trap, many cheap lots sit in older subdivisions with unpaved private roads. Wakulla County doesn't maintain them. Before issuing building permits, the county may require road improvements to meet emergency vehicle access standards, minimum width, turnaround areas, load-bearing surface. If the subdivision has 20 lots but only 3 active owners, those 3 split the $40,000 road improvement cost, not 20 ways. $10,000 lot, $70,000 for VE foundation, $15,000 for septic and well, $10,000 in road improvements as your share, $7,000 annually for flood insurance. You're at $105,000 before building the house, then $700 monthly in flood insurance indefinitely. The lots are cheap because Zone VE doubles foundation costs, state permits add a year to timelines, and flood insurance alone can break a retirement budget. Cedar Key is a small island city in Levy County connected to the mainland by State Road 24. Historic fishing village, art galleries, seafood restaurants. The outer parcels are waterfront lots on Waikiki, Atsena Otaiki, and nearby islands accessible only by boat, plus isolated mainland parcels on tidal marshes. Lots run $5,000 to $12,000. The price reflects boat access only logistics, mandatory off-grid systems, archaeological restrictions, and islands that are physically shrinking. Boat access only means no vehicular access. All materials, equipment, supplies barged or boated in. Construction costs increase 30 to 50% due to transportation. Every sheet of plywood, every bag of concrete, every tool transported by water. Labor costs spike because contractors charge premiums for boat access sites. Emergency services access is weather dependent. No connection to mainland utilities. Building requires off-grid systems. Solar panels plus battery backup, $25,000 to $40,000. Rainwater catchment and cistern, $10,000 to $15,000. Composting toilet or holding tank system, $3,000 to $8,000. These aren't upgrades. They're requirements before you start conventional construction. Some outer islands have documented archaeological sites, shell middens from prehistoric Native American occupation, and endangered species habitat for shorebirds and sea turtles. Florida and federal law protect these resources. Archaeological surveys may be required before permits. Nesting season restrictions limit when construction can occur. Setbacks from archaeological sites can consume most of a small lot. Environmental mitigation may be required. These add cost, delay, uncertainty. Outer parcels sit in Zone VE with base flood elevations often 11 to 14 feet NAVD 88. These low-lying islands face erosion during hurricanes. Hermine in 2016, Irma in 2017, Adalia in 2023. All cause shoreline changes and structure damage. Some lots have literally eroded away or shrunk. Google Earth historical imagery shows documented shoreline retreat. $8,000 lot, $35,000 for solar and battery, $12,000 for cistern, $5,000 for composting system, $3,000 for archaeological survey, $70,000 for VE foundation elevated 14 feet. You're at $133,000 before walls, and the lot may be smaller in 10 years than it is today. The lots are cheap because everything costs triple to build. You're completely off-grid by necessity, and the islands are physically changing shape with each hurricane season. Everglades City sits in Collier County at the edge of Everglades National Park and 10,000 islands. Population under 400. Legendary tarpon fishing. Western Everglades Gateway, surrounded by federal and state protected lands. Lots run $7,000 to $14,000. The price reflects impact fees that exceed lot costs, hurricane history that rewrote flood maps, manatee restrictions that block dock permits, and regulatory hemming by protected lands on all sides. Collier County impact fees are some of Florida's highest. New single-family home here, $10,000 to $15,000 in road impact fees, $2,000 to $4,000 for emergency services, $1,500 to $3,000 for parks and recreation. Total impact fees can hit $15,000 to $22,000 before you pour a foundation. Your $7,000 lot carries $18,000 in fees before construction starts. No municipal water or sewer. Well and septic required. High water table and low elevation mean mound septic systems. $12,000 to $18,000 versus $4,000 to $6,000 for conventional. Everglades City has been hammered repeatedly. Hurricane Donna in 1960 brought 13-foot surge. Wilma in 2005 caused 6 to 8 feet of flooding. Irma in 2017 delivered 7 to 10 feet of surge with widespread destruction. The town sits near sea level. Virtually all waterfront falls into Zone AE or VE with base flood elevations 9 to 12 feet NAVD 88. Waterfront lots often abut designated manatee habitat. Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act and Federal Endangered Species Act create dock restrictions. exclusions. Building a dock requires FWC permit, Army Corps permit, manatee protection plan with boat speed restrictions and signage. Review periods stretch 6 to 12 months. Some lots functionally cannot have docks due to seagrass beds and manatee habitat. Waterfront you can look at but never use for boating. The regulatory reality hemmed in by Everglades National Park, Big Cypress National Preserve, Steinhatchee Strand Preserve. Development is frozen by federal and state policy. Collier County's growth management plan severely limits density and infrastructure expansion here. This isn't an area expecting growth or improved services. $7,000 lot, $18,000 in impact fees, $15,000 for mound septic, and well, $60,000 for elevated foundation to 11 feet. That's $100,000 invested before framing, and your waterfront may not support a dock even after permit battles. The lots are cheap because impact fees alone exceed purchase price. Repeated hurricane flooding is documented history, and environmental protection makes this waterfront you own but may never fully use. Chokoloskee is an island 3 miles south of Everglades City, connected by causeway. Population under 400. The island runs roughly 1 mile long, half-mile wide. Edge of 10,000 islands and Everglades National Park. Fishing and ecotourism economy. Lots go 6 to 13,000. The price reflects finite island geography, post-Irma elevation mandates, grandfathering myths that trap buyers, and lot geometry that makes building nearly impossible. Chokoloskee can't sprawl. It's a fixed island. Development capacity is capped by geography. Lots are limited, but demand is also limited due to remoteness and lack of services. Lots that can't be built on have minimal value because there's no alternative use and no appreciation story. Hurricane Irma in 2017 brought 7 to 10 feet of surge. Post-Irma, Collier County and FEMA reevaluated. New construction now requires strict elevation. Zone A, E, and VE base flood elevations 10 to 13 feet in AVD 88. Required finished floor BFE plus 1 foot minimum. Many lots need 12 to 14 feet of elevation above existing grade. On an island with high water table and no nearby fill sources, elevating this high is expensive. Pilings must embed 15 to 20 feet below grade. Engineered fill must be barged in if used. The grandfathering trap: older Chokoloskee homes built in the 50s through 70s sit on low slabs or minimal elevation, grandfathered under old FEMA maps. If a grandfathered home is substantially damaged, more than 50% of market value, it loses grandfathered status and must meet current code to rebuild. Irma substantially damaged many properties, forcing expensive elevation or abandonment. Vacant lots never had grandfathered status. New construction meets current code from day one. Buyers mistakenly believe old lots allow old standards. Wrong. Flood insurance post-risk rating 2.0 remains brutal even for elevated homes. Surrounded by water, low elevation, documented surge history means 4 to 7,000 annual premiums for properly elevated modest homes. Many lots are small, 50 by 100 or 60 by 120. Collier setbacks, 7.5 feet each side, 25 front, 10 rear, plus 15 to 25 feet riparian from water. On a 50 by 100 waterfront lot, buildable envelope after setbacks can shrink to 25 by 35 feet. Fitting an elevated home on pilings that needs clearance for parking underneath, plus septic drain field that can't go under the structure, plus well setback from septic, plus vehicle access. The puzzle doesn't solve on many small lots. $6,000 lot, $70,000 for pilings embedded 20 feet and elevated 14 feet, $15,000 for septic and well, $5,000 annual flood insurance. That's $400 monthly in flood insurance alone, and the buildable envelope may not physically accommodate code-compliant construction. The lots are cheap because the island can't grow. Irma reset all elevation requirements, and small lot geometry makes many parcels unbuildable under current setback and septic rules. Port St. Joe sits in Gulf County on St. Joseph Bay. The outer lots, unincorporated parcels on Bay and Gulf sides, run 5 to 14,000. Hurricane Michael made landfall here October the 2018 as a Category 5 with 14 to 16 feet of storm surge. Michael rewrote everything. Post-Michael, FEMA remapped flood zones and raised base flood elevations to 12 to 16 feet NFD 88. Many Zone AE areas shifted to Zone VE. Building to new elevation requirements means foundations cost $80 to $120,000 $100,000 for modest homes. Pilings embedded 20 to 25 feet below grade. 6 years later, some outer lots still lack restored utilities. Storm destroyed infrastructure. Buyers assume water and sewer exist because they once did, then discover the county hasn't restored lines and won't commit to timelines. Private well and septic add 15 to 20,000. Crystal River in Citrus County is known for manatees and springs. Waterfront under 15,000 sits on man-made 1960s canals, not the spring-fed river itself. Many canals run 2 to 3 feet deep with no Gulf access. Federal manatee critical habitat blocks dock permits after 6 to 12-month reviews that often end in denial. The septic geometry fails here. 60 by 100 lots with waterfront on the short end require 75-foot septic setback from water. That consumes most of the 100-foot depth, leaving insufficient room for house, well, and drain field. The 2 to 4 foot water table makes 12 to 18,000 mound septic mandatory. $8,000 canal lot becomes waterfront you can't use for boating or build on without expensive alternative systems. Florida waterfront under 15,000 exists in every location we covered, but the pattern never changes. The price always reflects something specific you'll pay for later. FEMA flood zones requiring $80,000 foundations. CBRA exclusions killing federal insurance. Septic setbacks that make small lots unbuildable. Hurricane Michael and Idalia damage that reset elevation requirements and insurance costs. The lot's cheap because someone already did the math on what it costs to build there legally. Retirees who succeed verify current flood maps, calculate all-in costs including annual insurance, and confirm buildable envelope before signing. Because in every case here, public records revealed exactly why the price was what it was.